Hello to everybody out there. It's June 14th, 2016, and it actually is the midnight hour. And I'm going to do another one of these Dogman rambles. Sometimes you don't have anybody else to talk to, and so sometimes these crazy thoughts come to mind. You just got to get them out there somewhere. So let me start with this. Do you think evolution created something like the Dogman? I mean, that would be something, would it? Would that not be the absolute epitome? That would be your transition species right there. But somehow I got a feeling that evolution did not create the Dogman. I don't think it's a natural creature. I mean, if it's out there, it's not a natural creature. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that's not how it works. Evolution didn't create a Dogman. So, I mean, like, you get a lot of people, and I hate to just jump in here, but I'll have to skip the 101. The second incursion idea. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are relating this whole Dogman phenomenon with Genesis 6, which I can see. You know, people argue back and forth about a second incursion. Some say Noah's family still held the blood of the Nephilim. Somewhere, someone in the family. People argue back and forth about who. But animals were corrupted at the same time, is kind of where I'm getting. Not only were in the old days, not only were the human bloodlines corrupted, but the animal bloodlines were corrupted as well. And so, how many of the corrupted animal bloodlines still exist? Something like that would tend to account, to me anyway, for the fact that people have been talking about it for centuries. You know, there's entire stories about various people back and forth through time, trading with them, having dealings with them. So if they've been around a long time, well, maybe that's the way they got there. If these are, in fact, corrupted animals more than they are corrupted people, that might explain what we've got there. I mean, do they occur continually? I mean, like we were just talking about, do they keep breeding, going on themselves as like a corrupted animal species? Do the genes express randomly? I mean, are the genes just held within people, within animals, and then every so often one comes out of the oven and he's got the right genes and something is triggered and they change? Is there an artificial trigger for that matter? With all the fun games we're playing with DNA, who knows what may have been found? I mean, you can maybe play around and hit one of those artificial triggers, and the genes of all life for monstrous mutation come out to play. But I mean, if we're talking about werewolves here, what about silver bullets? Yeah, it's funny how garlic and silver are both known to most of us today as blood purifiers, immune stabilizers, things like that. Good things, getting rid of disease, getting rid of evil, so to speak. And, obviously I say garlic and I say silver, and those things, obviously you think vampire, you think werewolf. Sometimes it's, silver, sometimes associated with vampires, but always associated with werewolves. So, I mean, can they actually, those things, do their work on these fairy guys? Can't help but wonder. Vampires and werewolves are most often described as being cursed or diseased. One would catch the bug, so to speak, suffer the symptoms, and become a carrier of the affliction and a spreader of the affliction. So, what about our Dogman? Anyone following the subject will hear again and again of people blasting away at these things and then hitting them sometimes, and usually getting little more out of them than a really angry, terrifying scream. Uh, there's only one story that comes right to mind where they claim to kill, but implied in that was the use of shotgun shells filled with silver dimes. It's an old fashioned way to do it. And you can see where I'm going. My mind is suddenly filled with images of Chief Brody from Jaws filling his bullets with nitro or whatever that was. Though in this case, I'm thinking maybe colloidal silver. I mean, silver of any kind would be nice. But I think it might be easier to fill plastic shot shells with anything that you can find than go, full on smithy and smelt out some full on silver bullets. Although, for distance sake, it'd be nice to have. One would think an old silver necklace crammed in a shotgun shell is a handier option. Better still, you weaponsmiths out there might want to consider creating a modern hand cannon or arquebus. I know nothing about the making of these weapons, just to entertain. I'm just entertaining my ignorance here. In the old days, there was a thing called an arquebus, and it basically was a hand cannon. And most of the time, it blew up in your hands more than it blew up anybody else. But I was thinking the concept I like. If you think about anything you've ever heard about pirate ships and such, there was talking about cramming silverware down there. So I'm thinking, well, actually, I should say it was kind of a joke that came up. The modern arquebus. Uh, it came originally as a zombie apocalypse weapon. The idea of being able to take powder from any bullets you can find and use scrap as ammunition seemed logical, given that sort of ever decaying zombie apocalypse situation. Suppose it's just as useful a last ditch weapon against the Dogman, Dogman room sweeper. Then again, a 50 caliber with the armor piercing rounds would be nice. But then again, I think, how much would it actually take? How much would you need? Could you electroplate a copper slug? Would that be enough? I mean, would that drop the? I mean, what about that suspended silver? Chief Brody style. Would it bring the curtains down on this guy, or would it just bring a smile to the son of a bitch? And we got lots of questions. But that's enough about silver for now. Now just let me go crazy and do a little blue skying. This is the kind of stuff that, when you have no answers, weird answers come to mind. We'll do a little blue skying. Let's see. Here's one. Dogman theory. Let's call it number one. Though I tend to put the Dogman in a category of occult workings, I can't help but wonder, what if they, or at least some of them, stick with me here, what if some of them are robots? Does that seem weird? Not so much if you've seen our tax money's DARPA dogs or the cheetahs. Some naive part of myself wishes to believe those robots were made to hunt the ever-growing cryptid population. But I'm thinking that, if that's anything to do with the case, it's more about collecting specimens than destroying them. I really can't see a good reason for those robots, actually. Having them as monster hunters is probably just some wishful thinking. Here's number two. Dogman as biological robot, controlled at a distance, Avatar style. I don't know what else to say about that, except it's really no weirder than any other aspect of what we're talking about. Let's see. Number three. Nowadays, we have Bigfoots with muzzles on, long claws, by all accounts, half breeds between Sasquatch and Dogman. Within the cryptid literature, we see both creatures spreading themselves around in that old familiar way. The notions of Sasquatch stealing women for terrible purposes goes back for centuries. Some folklore has dogmen spreading their curse through sexual intercourse, of all things. I mean, does that sound weird? I mean, what's really weird when we're starting out talking about dogman? What's weird in a subject like this? Many stories out there seem to show a conflict, maybe even a sort of generational conflict between Bigfoots and the dogmen. One of my favorite stories being about the native people being harassed by the Dogman until they finally got the idea of stealing the bones of giants and putting them in the Dogman's territory to attract the Bigfoots or giants and cause a war with them. And I mean, that's a fascinating idea. It didn't sound like it worked out very well, though. The people ended up leaving the land anyway. So when it comes to, you know, Hatfield and McCoy style arguments or warfare of any kind, outside of the killing, what's the other despicable behavior that usually rears its ugly head? If a Bigfoot would get crazy with a farm animal, as so many people are saying now, uh, would the Dogman be safe? I can hear the collective, ooh, that's disgusting, and and that's disgusting with you. I'm with you on that. But then again, what's weird? That's the old fashioned way of making little monsters. We can play fun games with DNA now. Surely they can get at least one viable freak for every, 1,000 hideous monsters. Let's go to number 4. What happens to Sasquatch that becomes infected with lycanthropy? First Nations tell us again and again, Sasquatch are people too. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and it's not a wonderful thought. If Sasquatch are people too, they may have similar motivations and weaknesses as we. I mean, people get angry, they want revenge. People with no earthly way to alter their circumstances, sometimes they turn to unearthly ways, sorcery. That said, I mean, stay with me here. What if the Sasquatch are indeed the descendants of those cursed at Babylon to be as apes? I mean, we have with Bigfoot creatures the idea if they're people too, but they look like apes. I mean, if that is the case, I mean, are they still angry about what happened? Do they remember what happened? Do they tell the stories to each other at night? So let's say we have angry ape men cursed by God, eking out a living in the harsh, wild world, remembering stories of their glory days and growing bitter in their generations. And at the same time, a horde of disembodied giants or demons roam the world, angry, looking for bodies to inhabit. And maybe a deal was struck. Though I get the feeling that, like normal humans making such deals, the Bigfoots may have gotten more than what they bargained for. Maybe they're finding themselves being replaced as the scariest thing in the woods. The flip side of the coin, if Sasquatch are just strange humans bearing a curse, well, then maybe some of them are trying to be redeemed. I mean, when there was the story, I believe it was Nebuchadnezzar who was cursed by God to go mad essentially and graze like an animal for years. And at the end of it, he was redeemed, I guess, at least for a while. He learned his lesson. So, if this is the similar kind of punishment being handed out, maybe this accounts for sometimes the Sasquatch being spoken of as cannibals, and other times as sometimes the savior of little children. I mean, if they're people, they're going to have personal motivations. And I like to think that actually. Maybe some Bigfoots out there trying to save their souls. So, why all the terror in the woods? When we start thinking about things like societal collapse, people start talking about bugging out. That's a term I've heard a lot lately, bugging out. This usually implies hiding in the woods, getting away from the cities, hiding in the woods. But what if the woods are filled with hyper violent predators right out of your nightmares? Where will you go? How many avid hunters have you heard telling the stories? They won't go in the woods anymore. How many of these accounts end in full on outdoor types, country people saying that they sold their land and moved to the city? I mean, a few come immediately to mind. The monsters are making urbanites out of the rural people. I mean, where are you going to go? Where's the Lone Ranger when you need him? But I'm just blue skying here. Maybe the real value in silver is not in the dollar that it trades for. Anyway, Thanks for listening. And to Sam Sneed out there in the wilds of Wisconsin, watch out for that goat man. I have no idea what that thing is.